Welcome. Mary's here. Hi, Mary. Great to have you all here. Well, I think it's the top of the hour. We're going to get started. Like I said, we got recordings. People can watch it later if they want. But thank you guys for coming today. So this is the first week I'm doing this. Let me tell you what my idea is, and it will evolve as we move into forward weeks. But calling it keynoting, but I really want it to just be a topics that are relevant to everyone. So I do encourage you, if you like what you hear today and you have some new ideas, please message me any way you want. And because we want to be responsive to what's on people's minds, right? So I picked a topic today, but it can change every week. There's not necessarily a format. I just want to be doing some sort of educational topic that you guys find relevant. So today I'm picking circuitry, and I'll share with you why. But in the future, as it said in the description, I'm happy to do chart readings of you guys. We can do famous people's charts. I did do President Putin a couple of weeks ago, so sometimes those are whoever's in the news. We can look at that. But if you got someone of interest, again, please let me know. I really appreciate the feedback. And also for today, I really enjoy the discussion. So as I'm going through my little presentation part, if you have the gate or channel that I'm talking about and want to say something, please come forward. I love hearing from you. If you have a question, I'd love to entertain it. I'm a generator, an MG, so I love to respond to things. So I just want you all to know that come forward, raise your hand, or if I'll look at the chat, but love to have the discussion. This isn't necessarily me just giving a lecture, so please join me in that. But again, the topic I picked, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. This is a slide from my transit talk this week that I do on Mondays. And this is today. And this chart was run at noon Mountain Standard Time. And it's the body graph, as you can see, on the left, and then the noon astrological chart for today on the right. And as I've been going through the transit talk, for those of you that got a chance to hear it, we have a lot of individual circuitry going on. Actually, I did want to record as well here. A lot of individual circuitry. Okay, so currently the sun has moved into gate 1 this week. And today we're in line 5. The Earth is in gate 2. We have Mercury in gate 14, Mars in gate 43, which, as we can see over here, those three, the Mercury, Mars, and Sun, are all very close to each other in the sign of Scorpio. And we are right in the middle of Scorpio, right? There's 30 degrees in each astrological sign, and we're at 17 degrees. So we're right in the middle of Scorpio season. We also have Jupiter in gate 24, Saturn in gate 55, Uranus in gate 23, and Pluto in gate 60. Okay, so of the 13 activations in the transit today, 8 of them are in individual gates. And we can see all these ones running right down the middle column here. And so that's why I thought it'd be fun to just dive in a little deeper to the individual circuit group. So before I leave this slide, I'm gonna pull some things from the Rave ABC and Rave cartography classes that I'm currently teaching. So I'm going to pull some information from there to do this discussion today. But just to highlight in the chart for today, we can see that the sun is really closing in on Mars. Now, we are going to have our next new moon this coming Monday. It's at 2:27 Mountain Standard Time. So it's going to really early hours of the morning for our location. But it's a pretty intense new moon, right? We're coming off the eclipse season, and this new moon, although it's not an eclipse, it has this element where it's going to be the closing of the eclipse season. The reason for that is we had a solar eclipse October 14th in Libra, and then we had a lunar eclipse October 28th, and that was in Scorpio, early degree Scorpio. And so this new moon is going to be in gate 43 conjunct Mars, and it's opposite Uranus. So it's a pretty potent energy, a lot of it all centered in the channel of structuring, which we're going to spend a little time on today as a result of that new moon. But so that's where I came up with this topic today, just to give a little background on it. And So as many of you may already be familiar with, in the body graph, there are three main circuit groups, we call them. We have collective over here on the left, and this chart shows all of the collective circuit group channels, and they are broken down into two subgroups. The logic, which is all on the left side of the chart, right, all associated with the splenic awareness center. And then we have the sensing collective circuitry, which is associated with the solar plexus emotional awareness system or center over time. When we look at slides like this, one thing that's helpful is there's some things we can notice just from basic observations. And one is that the collective, which is the keynote of sharing, the idea of whatever energy and archetype we find in collective channels, if we have a gate or a channel in collective circuitry, it's something we are just designed to share naturally all the time with anybody, everybody, friends, family, people at the grocery store. Abstract, yes, James, sensing is also called abstract as well. Kind of has two names just to add to the confusion a little bit. Sensing circuitry and abstract circuitry are the same thing. And they are, again, the word I use is governed, if you will, or associated with the theme of the solar plexus. All of these channels here in the sensing abstract circuitry, they do have a lot to do with the solar plexus, and most specifically with the formatting channel of that circuit, which is the channel of maturation down here. It's always interesting to look at the collective circuitry, how it makes this jump, right? We have the channel of abstraction, the 6447 over here on the left side of the chart, but then everything else is on the right, and then it jumps again down here. And same when we go to the logic circuitry, which has also got a name called understanding circuitry. There are two names for that one as well. That they make this jump here at the format. Now, what's interesting about that is, I don't know if Ra specifically said that. I know what Genoa has to say about that. But for one thing is just what's interesting from a visual observation is sort of this linking together. The symmetry in the body graph is everywhere. And so much can be learned just from looking at symmetry, looking at mirror channels, which we're going to do today. Again, we're going to focus on the individual just because of the transits, like I said. But there's a lot of symmetry whenever we're learning things in the body graph. But this linkage here, it's like, to me, what I always think about is there's almost like we go out and have these experiences in life, right? The solar plexus leans into life. It wants new relationships. It wants to have a new experience. The solar plexus is very brave. Right? It's willing to go through the emotional wave, the hopes and desires of gate 30 to go out and have a new experience. But once we do that, we need our logic circuitry to really review what that experience meant. What is there? We can refine it. We can perfect it. So there's sort of this continuous infinity conversation that never stops between the solar plexus and the splenic awareness center. And then these little jumps here where the circuitry, jumps from one side of the chart to the other, it's kind of the same sort of infinity circle. It just sort of links it all together into this unified, holistic, synergistic body graph that we live with. And so we can really see that just from these basic visual observations. So that's collective. So again, collective, we're thinking about it's very social. And even the fact that all of the channels are on the outside, right? They're all on the outer edge. So it's almost like it's the outer shell, if you will. That's where it's so easily shared with everyone. It doesn't have to be personal. Now, very opposite to that, when we go to tribal circuitry, we can see how it's the inner channels, right? The inner closest surrounding the sacral center. And that means something too. I mean, the fact that tribal circuitry is our blood bonds, right? This is our family, our community, our brother, our sister. I mean, this is where we say it's sticky, it's personal. The one word keynote is to support, right? Every channel in tribal circuitry is going to have to do with how we support others and how we expect support back. So loyalty, the bargain, right? The channel of community. These are the keynotes that we use for tribal. But the main essence to get from tribal is that it's deep. It's deep within our genetic blood bonding, things like eye for an eye, right? These are things, the religions, right? Things that are really deeply ingrained for us. And so there's always this really sticky, it really means something. Like it's just, and we're seeing this in the news, and that's what's so horrific about the unavoidable topic of the news, which is the wars that are going on, both in Ukraine and in the Middle East. I mean, these are tribal warfares that go back centuries, right? And we're still struggling with how to work things out. And it's because when it comes to the tribe, it's life or death. It makes me think of Gate 32. This is the fear of failure. And that fear of failure, it's the failure of the tribe. It's about the tribe not existing anymore. And we do see with the Israelis and the Palestinians, it's really an existential threat that one of them feels like they're going to be extinct. And so that's why we are still going through this. So it is a sad and bit of a triggering topic. But just to highlight, when we talk tribal, man, we're talking like it gets the blood pumping. But today, because of the transits, I did want to, as I said, focus on the individual circuitry. And so as we look at this middle part of the chart here for individual, the one word keynote for individual is empowerment, right? So with individual circuitry and every channel that is involved with that, it has this empowering capability, not only empowering for the person that carries it, but especially their aura, their energy, the archetypes that they're designed to express can also empower those around them. And it also has a sub-circuitry too. So we have the knowing circuitry, which is everything that we see in this body graph. And I have another slide I'm going to go to so we can hone in on this. But we have what's called the knowing circuit group, which is part of individual circuitry. But then we also have two channels that make up the centering sub-circuit of individual circuitry. What's interesting is when we combine the centering circuitry with the knowing circuitry, we also end up with the integration field, which is another one. I almost was going to do today's talk on integration, but so many of those transits are actually in the knowing circuitry. So if you guys would like, I'd be happy to do a deeper dive on the integration field, because there's some fascinating elements about integration, like why is it even called integration? What is going on there? Now, we know that it's about survival. It is one of the core components of being human, to be empowered and use our intuition to behave in the now, to be human, essentially. But there's a lot of other things we can pick out of that. But it is interesting to note that it's the joining together of the centering circuit and the knowing circuitry that actually produces what we know as the integration field, which actually doesn't even fall within one of the three main circuit groups. It's actually its own category because it's so unique. It's 4 gates that produce 6 channels. And there's lots of sub meanings underneath all those layers. So I thought that might be a fun one for a future topic. But today, after all of that lead in, we're here to talk about the knowing circuitry. And hang on a second. My slide is not communicating with me here. Well, hang on here. Give me just 1 second, guys. Let me try this again. Something is not cooperating. It was going so smoothly for a minute. Well, my goodness. Huh. All right. Well, that's okay. I've got some sort of technical difficulty that's not making much sense to me, and I do this every week, so I'm really not sure what. But we can work around it. All right, I'm just going to use this slide. This will be sufficient. So back to individual. So let's talk about this individual. So what's very unique about it, again, just from the visual observation, is that all the channels in the knowing circuit do make up the very center, right? They have the tribal channels on the inside of individual. We have the collective on the outside, the sharing, right? So we can see how this individual, the channels of the individual circuit group are right in the middle. And so that just speaks to how deep within the core of being a human these archetypes reside. So we're talking about something very deep. And that's why I thought it fit well again today, because we're in the season of Scorpio. Scorpio is fixed water in astrological terms, which means it is like the deep within the deep. As Scorpio is ruled by Mars and Pluto, which when we think about Pluto, we're talking about life, death, possible rebirth, transformation, and mutation. And so that astrological sign is very closely associated with individual circuitry as well. We are using words like melancholy. We talk about the pulse, so whenever we start with a circuit group, it's always helpful to start with the formatting channel, which is down here connecting the sacral center to the root motor pressure center. Whenever we look at a formatting channel, we're talking about a channel that really sets the pace for the rest of the channels in that circuit group. And so this channel is called the channel of mutation. It's a design that initiates and fluctuates. And so this is why you hear the keynote of the word pulse. All of the channels in the knowing circuit group operate on a pulse. And that's why it's called the knowing circuit group, is because it knows, it's like, I know, I got it. And then the pulse is off and it disappears, right? And there can be that down period, or as we say, the melancholic, the sort of that sweet sadness of like, when is the pulse going to return, right? Every channel, as I'm going to go through these and keynote all of them, and I see there are some chats coming in. It would help me too, if anybody that wants to, if there's a question, just shout it out to me, because it's a little easier while I'm talking. If somebody just says, hey, there's a question. If you're making comments, that's fine. You guys can all read them. It's just a little distracting. So please come forward if you just raise your hand or anything, so I know. Yeah, this channel of mutation, mutation is part of every channel in the knowing circuit group, because it has this pacing. It has a chemistry that is in the deep recesses of our cells, right? That has this timing that we don't control, right? There's no way to force any of these timings, the process that they work on. But for the knowing circuitry, it's either on, it's like these electric moments where there's some sense of knowing, and that knowing can come from whatever individual channel someone may have. And then there's this off, where it's just like literally can be like a light switch. That's why, as I'll speak further about when we get to the channel of emoting, that channel, as you may have heard about in the books and all, like it has this spiking element, right? Whereas the collective emotional wave tends to be sort of more of this wave action. Individual emotionality, when you're combining the pulse of the channel of emoting with the chemistry of the solar plexus, we have two things going on there. And it's a little difficult sometimes to parcel that out. But the idea is that that wave can spike because that pulse can turn on or off. It can be gate 55, which is, I'm so abundant, I'm emotionally full, I feel amazing. And then a minute later, it's like, it's gone. What happened? It disappeared. My glass is all of a sudden empty at this moment. So I just want to highlight this fact that every channel we're going to talk about has this element to it. And so as we're looking, what I'm doing today is I'm going to be basically storyboarding the entire knowing circuitry. Now, of course, we don't all carry the full circuit group for any circuitry. No one does, right? That's not even statistically possible. We carry pieces of everything, right? And so we can look at the storyline, so to speak. Then we look at our chart and see which gate or channel that we have in individual circuitry. And it's very helpful to take your charts and add all these gates up, right? Count up how many individual gates, how many tribal gates, how many collective. Even these simple exercises can provide tremendous insights into how you're wired, right? And there's a whole conversation involved with that as well. But this is what we're talking about. Once we have a deeper understanding of everything that all of these channels are doing together and their full story, we can start to understand our piece of that, our voice in that. Now, from there, of course, we simply will rely on our personal authority and our strategy of our type of how we express that archetype correctly for each of us. So, right, we've kind of got a little bit of a process how we go through here, but it can be very helpful to really understand the whole story of the circuit group, because sometimes if we're not familiar with that and we just simply keep going to the Ray V. Ching and reading the lines that Ra wrote, sometimes it's a little confusing, and that's natural. That's the same for all of us. I mean, some of them resonate right away. Some of them can take years of contemplation to really see it play out in our life. But just again, kind of sinking into the fundamentals of each circuit group are going to really help you connect to those gates and lines and channels that you have in your own chart to see which part of the story are you here to share it. So the channel of mutation, gate 60 from the root center going up to gate 3. But from there, I want to go up to the top, the counterbalance to that, right? So we have I'm getting ahead of myself. The channel of mutation coming from the root center is a physical, adrenalized pressure to experience mutation, right? Someone that carries that channel, it's just a natural part of their chemistry to experience this mutation. And another analogy, when I think of this channel, which is the most dynamic and the most mutative channel possible in a body graph. If you look at it from the Rave mandala, it's the gates 3 and gate 60 are actually in a perfect square to each other. That's an astrological aspect term that I'm using. But a square in astrology is the most dynamic aspect possible. And a square indicates the energy, the dynamism for change. When planets are squared to each other, there needs to be some resolution. You can think of it like two cars coming to each other, like at an intersection. Something's got to give, or they're going to crash into each other. So it requires some rectification, or something needs to be resolved. Basically, change needs to happen in a square. Well, gate 3 and gate 60 are in a square, and that's very fitting for the fact that they're in the channel of mutation and they carry this deep mutative quality. A really good analogy of this in nature to me is the caterpillar and the butterfly, right? I mean, the caterpillar is a beautiful insect, and it's got a pretty good life crawling around branches and eating its leaves, but something inside it knows that at some particular moment in time, it's supposed to stop and go into its little chrysalis, and basically it dissolves into this black gooey mess. It essentially dies. The caterpillar dies. The organism doesn't die, but the caterpillar dies, and yet something even more amazing and spectacular and beautiful emerges and flies away. I mean, this is that story in nature is basically what's possible in the channel of mutation. And gate 60, which is where Pluto is right now in the chart for all of us, gate 60 is called the gate of limitations. It's also called the gate of acceptance. But what I'm getting from this channel is that we all are coming into life born into limitations. I mean, the very fact that we live in a body that's going to die, that's a genetic limitation. We are also born into cultural history, cultural conditioning, cultural wounding, right? This could come from past lives that we've come back again in this body to try to resolve. Whatever the case may be, we are born into thousands of years of limitations that we're now how to figure here to work with, right? And we're going to have our specific limitations that each of us is on this plane, if you will. We're born at a very specific moment in time. That's what all this information is built upon. And so all these transits that we're getting, we all have our Saturn return, our Uranus opposition, and our Chiron return. All of that music, I call it sheet music, is written from the moment of birth. So nothing happens by accident. Everything does happen in its own time. And this channel of limitations, I just want to express the idea from it, which is that, yeah, the fact that we have resistance and friction and obstacles and challenges, this is the nature of life. And we get to come here and live like in this suspended disbelief. You know, it's kind of like we go to a good movie, and after a few minutes, you forget you're in the movie theater and you're absorbed in the story. Well, that's what happens with life, right? We leave source, we incarnate into a body, we experience the illusion that we're separate from each other, even though we kind of know we're not, but we are. we live like we are. And we're going to experience challenges that help us know who we are. That's what they're there for. You know, this is what the planet Saturn is really all about. Saturn is called the taskmaster. He is Father Time. He was the farthest planet that we could see in the sky up until 1781, right? So for thousands of years, we were gazing at the sky and Saturn was the limit. So he always brings this idea of restriction and limitation. He rules Capricorn, which is very much about structure, right? So Saturn represents the structure, the framework of our lifespan on Earth. And that's why Saturn comes along and he provides his return, and we've got squares and so forth. We can look at all the aspects, but Saturn is there to prevent these challenges. Why? So that we can mutate, right? We have to overcome limitations or not. We're going to follow our strategy, which that's the most important thing, because we don't want to get involved in challenges that aren't meant for us. That's a big headache. That's a waste of time and energy and anxiety. So if we're going to get involved in a challenge, we want to make sure that it's really the one that we were supposed to meet. And that's where we come to our authority. But just to finish that, and I want to ask Sirach there what he's going to say, but this channel of mutation speaks so much to our life experience, right? At a very core level, with our individual circuitry, we are here to express creative individuality. And regardless of how many gates or channels, we all still carry all of the circuitry. So even if you don't have very many individual gates activated in your birth chart, you're still going to experience the entire circuit group at various times throughout our entire life. And we're all getting a huge dose of it right now. So simply following strategy and authority will help us align which part of the creative process are we involved in. But it really, that story begins here in the channel of mutation. And so just to end that thought, I want to share that the words you'll keep hearing me say in this discussion today is mutation and creativity, right? Creativity is where I've been suggesting, I've been working on this myself this week. This is where the strength lies with individual gates and circuitry. Focusing on our creative side, whatever that is for all of us, right? Whether it's music, art, drawing, writing, playing like a child, walking in nature, things that inspire us creatively, they do nurture these aspects, and they have tremendous health benefits as well. Number one, creativity essentially eliminates fear. And that's really important, because when we are in individual circuitry, there can be a lot of fear. One of the keynotes of the circuitry itself is uncertainty. When that pulse is off, there is a tremendous degree of uncertainty, and uncertainty is uncomfortable. And if it's allowed to manifest and grow stronger, it does turn into fear, and fear has all kinds of negative health benefits, as we all know. Fear is a terrible place to live. There's a lot of it in the world right now, and it's being shown to us because of these transits, which are pounding our individual circuitry collectively for the planet right now. So that's why fear is so prevalent right now. But through focusing on our creative nature, it is going to stimulate more of it. And so it's a tremendous defense thing that can be used to combat fear. So whatever gate or channel you're looking at, whenever you're reading in the Rei Ching or anything you're reading about what that gate or line means in individual circuitry, always remember that that's something you can work with and enhance through creative exercises. Sirach, hi there. Good to see you. Welcome. Join me.
Thanks. Good to see you too. I'm loving the talk. It's so interesting. I just had a quick question about so you sort of touched on it, the defined versus undefined with 360, because we all have the circuitry. I'm just wondering, what is the difference then between having it defined versus undefined? If I have like for someone that does have a lot of individual circuitry defined versus not, what does that mean for the collective and for that person?
Right.
If
So
I
if
was to
you
give a reading in that, in the context of like a reading, like telling
Yeah,
someone,
yeah. So it's something, okay, so that I didn't say this in the beginning, but for my work in doing readings, circuitry is my favorite thing. Like it's one of the, when I first look at a chart, of course, I'm looking at what determines the type, number one, where's the authority, number two. Number three for me is circuitry. I'm looking at how much of each circuit group they have and how does that tie into the personal authority. So it's incredibly important, circuitry. It is the structural framework of the entire body graph. I think of it like a house, right? When a house is built, there's a bunch of materials on the ground, but when they frame a house up, they do it pretty quickly. And if house gets framed up, even though you can still see through it, right? Because it's only the 2x6s and the framing, whatever they used, but we now see the structural integrity of the house. We can walk through the rooms and in and out the front door. It holds the house together. We still have to put all the interior inside and the exterior on the outside and all that, but I cannot understate how important circuitry is. Number one. Number two, so to your question, if there's a lot of individual gates in a body graph, that is going to indicate that there's going to be a strong resonance with all of these keynotes, right? With the pulse, with the mutation, with the creativity, with the uncertainty. This melancholic theme is really important to understand. And one of the main things to know about melancholy for those that have a lot of individual circuitry is it's natural part of your process. Not only is it natural, it's the most important part. When I think about a great artist who paints on a canvas, maybe for days in a row, they don't even sleep. They've got some creative, mutative urge. They're putting it on the canvas. They're sweating and they're just pouring their life into this thing. And when they finish, they cannot just go to another canvas. They have to take a breath and have the downtime to go back into the inner world, that Neptunian watery world of expansion where things can percolate again. There has to be the melancholic downtime in between the pulse so that things can regenerate and rejuvenate. It's kind of like the seasons right now. I keep referring to Scorpio. We are deep in the heart of fall in the northern hemisphere. The leaves are falling off the trees. It's getting colder. The nights are getting shorter. All of nature in the northern hemisphere is starting to withdraw back into itself. And that's what individual circuitry does in between this pulse. It has to go back into itself to regenerate, revive, and to emerge again, right? So it's this on and off. So that's part to your question. If there's a lot of it, it's really important to engage and nurture and surrender into the nature of individual circuitry. And I think you also had part of the question was, if we're talking about the channel of mutation, what's the difference of having it or not having it? Well, simply that if you have the channel defined, it's going to be part of your genetic makeup to express that channel through your strategy. Everything that we ever say is always going to come back to the strategy. So we'd have to look at what's the authority in the chart. Is it a center? Is it a process for a reflector? And how is that channel most naturally, energetically, and correctly going to get expressed? So right now we have Pluto in gate 60. So what that is giving all of us right now is the energetic archetype of gate 60, this idea of limitations. What do we do with that? Well, these are all opportunities. Every transit, every minute of every day is something that we are accepting through the neutrino stream, which are opportunities on how we get to express ourselves or not, right? So it doesn't mean, again, it's going to come back to authority. That gate 60 that's coming through the transit, only our authority can decide how are we going to meet whatever energetic archetype it is offering us, right? They're not all for us. Our authority will determine our path of which challenges are right for us. And again, I don't know if I finished my point on that and this thing about Saturn. The way I approach this is that, these Saturnian aspects or Plutonic aspects or Mars too, these ones that can kind of be the most challenging, if you will, kind of in the way we judge things collectively. These challenges are there so that we know who we are. I mean, we all love life when it's super easy and breezy. It's so cool. It's like, things are just clicking right now. I mean, sure, we love that, but I think we can all admit we really don't learn anything about ourselves. It's kind of like if you want to grow muscles, you have to use the muscles. If you don't ever do anything, muscles don't grow. They have to be stressed. We actually lift weights, we tear down the muscle fibers, and they grow back bigger, stronger, and more beautiful than before. Well, that's what Saturn's there for. This taskmaster, I think, really to appreciate the gifts he offers us, because if we don't experience resistance, we literally don't get to enjoy what we came here to live out. So that's kind of the way it's designed. It's the way I've come to look at it. It always reminds me of Gate 6. And that's one of my favorite taglines in the entire Rave I Ching. The tagline of Gate 6 is that the fundamental design component of progress is the law that growth does not exist without friction. And that's what these transits do sometimes. And that's what can happen with this channel of mutation. Although it may appear like, oh, man, I gotta go through all that, but so much of life can be, we don't talk a lot about attitude in human design, but I have found it to be extremely important. And understanding our body graph better, as we're doing right now, and diving into these structures of archetypes, it does help our attitude. It just really helps us have this third-party system, the human design system, to go, okay, this is in the channel of mutation. So yeah, Pluto in Gate 60 right now, it's pretty challenging. It's at the end of Capricorn, and it's been in Capricorn for 15 years. And it started in 2008, and that's when we had the world Great Recession, right? And since that time in 2008, everything from the social media and all the, we're learning about how there's a lot of mistrust out there. Our governments are not supporting our people. We see that everywhere. I don't care what country you live in. There are problems with the structures of our governments, with our social structures. So Pluto, being the planet of truth and transformation, as it's progressed through Capricorn, it's been showing us the underbelly of our large institutional structures, right? And so it's very fitting that Gate 60 is at the end of Capricorn, because it's like this is the final limitation that we have to run through the ring of fire and finally get into Aquarius. Now, once Pluto gets into Aquarius, we're going to have a completely different theme going on, right? We're moving into fixed air. It's about social equality. I'm not saying it's going to be a paradigm out there, but it's definitely going to be a lot different. Right now, we're getting the backstory, right? What's going on underneath all of these structures. And we're learning all this, and it's pretty chaotic right now. But as we move into Aquarius, the one hope is there is going to be this movement of a more egalitarian structure. So we can see this with things popping up like cryptocurrency, things on the internet, social media, where there's a breakdown of structure. This idea of blockchain, that's a very Aquarian idea. It's like no one has control over it. It's just this thing out there, and we all participate in it. So anyway, that's going to be a long process. Pluto is going to be in Aquarius for 20 years. So, I'm talking long-term right here, but what's happening is because it's at the final degrees of Capricorn, it feels really heightened. Anytime a planet gets to the end of an astrological sign, it's pretty turbulent. We call the final 29th degree the anaretic degree, and it's the last chapter of the story. And it's like, so there's a lot of intensity. It's the end of the book. Like we really got to get the point. And so that's why we're seeing such an intensification of Plutonian themes in the world right now. And the fact that it was retrograde felt like forever. It finally has started moving forward. It's beginning to pick up speed, but we may start to feel some forward movement from that structure. But at any rate, and then Gate 3, just to finish on this channel, is the gate of ordering, right? So this is the life force energy ability to respond, right? The sacral only knows itself out of response, but to respond to the limitation and create order. That's what Gate 3 does. So when you bring those two gates together, we have possible mutations, something new, something that's never been seen before. And by the way, that's all of individual. Every channel, every gate in individual circuitry is challenging in the sense it's never been done before. And that's why individual circuitry, there's resistance from the tribe and from the collective. Tribal and collective are very uncomfortable with individual energy, right? Because we like to keep things the same. All right. Our family does it this way. You got to do it this way. If we're going to get married, you've got to conform to my principles, right? So there's a lot of conversation between tribal collective versus individual. Individual takes courage, right? You think of gate 51 in the channel of initiation, right? It takes a lot of courage to stand up with your own voice of truth. And so the tribe doesn't like it. We like things to be the same, right? We've done it this way for generations. You can't be dressing like that. You can't be having a sex change. We don't allow that. So there's just always this restriction, wariness, distrust towards the individual because they're the freak to genius channel of structuring, which I'm going to get to in a second here. But again, you can hear all these themes in every channel of individuality where something is trying to come out that's new. And the importance of it, the reason it's part of the body graph is it's what drives evolution, right? The tribe and the collective, they're trying to perfect and protect and prolong status quo. So we have to have the individuals stand up as their true self, do it a different way, experiment, be the adventurer, be the explorer, be the freak. Don't be afraid of the comments or what people are saying about you to actually stand up into your truth. So it's individual circuitry that actually is driving us into evolution. And so it's incredibly valuable, but it's challenging because of those reasons, because again, society is not comfortable with it. Now, in some cultures, we're getting better at it. We're starting to be a little more accepting. I am seeing a little bit of collective movement, but just to say how long it can take, again, when you think about a lot of the most famous artists that we know about from history, they were not famous in their time. Van Gogh was he was poor, right? I mean, these great artists produced artwork that took a long time to be accepted. And so we all have to realize that about whatever we're working with, our individual gates that we may have in our chart, how much nurturing, how much appreciation that it takes to really allow that percolating to happen so we eventually follow our strategy and we can emerge it with truth and power and be empowered. It takes that empowering because it has to be brave. It has to have courage to confront the resistance that it may have. So we have that channel, right? So this is a physical adrenal energy that we are born into, right? We are all have the root center. Again, it's operating differently mechanically, whether it's defined or undefined. So that's very important. But just to know that we are all living, whether it's defined or not, we're still living with the root pressure, and the root center drives us out into the world, right? If we didn't have a root center, we'd never leave the crib. It's like the root center says, yes, you need to have another relationship. Yes, you need a new experience. Yes, you have to go out and try something. So we're being driven this way. Well, this pressure from this center and from the channel of mutation, we look at the symmetrical counterbalance to that is up here in the head and the ajna. The channel of awareness, a design of the thinker. Now, from the head center, which is another pressure center, but it's a mental pressure. And again, we're born with this from the get-go. As soon as we pop out, even though we're a baby, we're under pressure. And you think about when we're infants, we don't maybe remember that time period. But I'm sure as babies, when we pop out, there's all these people around us and everyone's kind of frantic, like, oh my God, is everything okay? We're under pressure. Where the hell did I just come from? That carries out our whole life, right? We experience mental pressure, and that pressure is to intellectually figure out what the hell is going on. Why am I here? Gate 61, called the gate of inner truth. What is my truth? What is my deep, deep soul truth? That's a pressure that never goes away. Now, again, mechanically, it can, again, based on if it's undefined and when you get the pressure. But to say the archetype of the circuitry, regardless of definition, it's built in to the human experience. Gate 61 is also called the gate of mystery because it often is a mystery. Another way to say mystery is my story. So I often think of it as my story is often a mystery. And it's a pressure, and it does pressure the ajna to have mental anxiety.
Mommy,
So
I go on tank.
Somebody's got something to share. So this channel of awareness is speaking to that. It's this pressure to understand the meaning of life, to search for what is our inner truth. So when you think about it, again, right out of the gate of this story, we're in that pressure sandwich, as we often call it, physical pressure to experience the creative, mutative quality of what it means to be a human. And we're under the mental pressure to intellectually understand, why the hell am I here? Okay. But it is important elements of the story. And again, even though I've only talked about 2 channels, we're coming back to this idea that it's a process. It has a timing. It's an on and an off. There will be moments where we're like, yes, this is me. I do understand this piece of the truth, right? And we'll have it sometimes, and then whew, it's gone like the wind. You're like, God, I thought I really was pretty sure I had life figured out. And then another transit came along, and all of a sudden it's confusing. So there's always going to be this cycle of development coming from this pulsating quality of individual circuitry and what it means to understand and be aware. Channel of awareness. So it goes into the Ajna Center, right? The center of conceptualizing. It's doing its thing. And what the Ajna is doing, it's an awareness center. It's always communicating with the other 2 awareness centers, right? It's always having to listen to what's coming from the spleen, this most ancient instinctual awareness from the past. This is from eons of genetic development of how did we survive? We know at 1 year old, you touch a stove and it's hot, you jerk your hand away. No one has to tell a child to pull their hand away from a hot stove, right? It's there. So we have these splenic awarenesses. And again, the spleen is immediate. It's like cusp of the now. It doesn't have to think about it, doesn't wait out a wave. It's like, bam, it's there. So we always recognize our spleen in near-death accidents. If you've nearly died in an instant, you definitely recognized you are born with a spleen, whether or not it's defined or not, it turned on and it saved your life. So the Ajna is always trying through this channel of awareness to be aware of the meaning in life, and it's communicating with the spleen, right? It's accepting that side of itself, that sustainability and health and well-being. What is that part of the story? And it's also communicating with the other awareness center, the solar plexus, which is the awareness over time, right? This is related to our no, I had a brain fart there. Our nervous system, right? Our nervous system is always communicating with us. This is the biological association with the solar plexus, and it's a pacing that takes time, right? So there's the cycles on that side of on this awareness center. We're talking about beginnings and middles and ends, right? It's ruled by the channel of maturation over here. So we're talking about cycles of development that through patience, over time, going through cycles, the highs, the lows, the ups and downs, the peaks, the valleys, the twists and the turns. If we take our time, our nervous system is going to live through that. It's going to talk to our body. We're going to experience awareness through patience. And over time, we may become mature and wise through that patience. So these 3 awareness centers are always communicating with each other. Always. These centers form the interface between what's happening on the inside of my body and what's happening on the outside of my body. And there's this constant exchange of awareness going on. And so in the Ajna Center, here it is, through that channel of awareness, it's trying to conceptualize and intellectualize, talk to the spleen and the solar plexus to figure out, why are we here? What is this darn life about? It doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. And that's natural with individual circuitry. It's not logic. It's not, there is a logic channel we'll get to, but at its core, it's about mutation and something new. So there's no history book on what comes from individual circuitry. It's designed to be the modern art and however that gets expressed. So it gets conceptualized here in the Ajna Center and then can be released through gate 43 down into the channel of structuring, which is called the design of individuality. So again, the keynoting here is very relevant. Channel of structuring, design of individuality, and it's nicknamed genius to freak. So as the Ajna is doing its conceptualizing, and hopefully at some point, based on that pulse, we don't know when, but at some moment in time, an insight emerges. This also called the gate of breakthrough. So it could be very stimulating. And right now, we all may be experiencing this in some degree because Jupiter is currently in gate 24. I'm sorry. It's in gate 20 up here. I was already in the channel of awareness. Let me get rid of some of my drawings here. Jupiter is in gate 24, the return. So there's a very expansive quality to people thinking about, what am I doing right now? Right? This is just like Jupiter always expands. It's a big planet, and it just always expands whatever it touches. So the fact that it's in gate 24 means we all have a lot of pressure right now to really mull stuff over during this transit. Doesn't mean we're supposed to do anything about it, unless your authority says that you do want to do something about it. But just the fact that it's a background noise, right? This returning over and over and over to these questions that we have. And again, it gets processed and conceptualized in the ajna and may emerge with an insight. So we're in gate 43. Well, right now, Mars is in gate 43. The sun is going to move into gate 43 on Monday for this new moon. So at the new moon on Monday, we're going to have a Mars-Sun conjunction in gate 43. So it's really relevant to this week. So there may be some breakthrough insights that we experience. It's possible. It doesn't mean we're supposed to do anything about them, but if you've got questions you're working on, this would be a super supportive time to be doing that creative work. My favorite is writing, the Wild Mind Writing, which is a really fun exercise. It's an unconscious writing exercise where you're just asking yourself a question and seeing what comes out at the end of the pen. And if you set the time, watch 5 or 10 minutes, don't stop. The key is to not stop writing, because inevitably as you're writing, you pause and you start thinking about what you're writing, and then you've lost the plot. It's an exercise, a timed writing exercise. Write a question and write for 5 minutes and don't stop. No, even if you want to write, I don't know what to write, but I'm keeping writing because that's what I was supposed to. Like, eventually you'll break through. And that breakthrough, whatever comes after that, that's the meat. That's where you'll read it the next day and be like, oh, that's what I didn't even think about that. You didn't think about it because it's unconscious. This allows the unconscious to come out through that exercise. So I'm just sharing all that because, again, gate 43 is in the news this week, because that new moon, not only is the sun conjunct the moon, right? So it's also going to be in 43. Both the sun and the moon are going to be in 43. We have Mars there as well. So we got 3 powerful vibrational qualities, and we have Uranus in the opposite gate, which is 23. Okay, so the channel of structuring is one of 3 channels where the gates form an opposition in the mandala. So those 3 channels are the most common channels on planet Earth, because they get defined very regularly, because the sun, Earth, as it moves around every year, it goes through those channels for at least a week a year. You've got the nodes that periodically, pretty rare, every 18 months, they'll go through it. So you've got these timings where we get these 3 channels of opposition, and they're very common. But this week, it's really highlighted because of that new moon in Mars, in gate 43, and with Uranus in 23, this planet of unusual breakthrough. I mean, Uranus really resonates with gate 43. It's this sudden insight, like bam, like lightning, like holy crap. So this is a very potent week to reflect on this channel. Like it's there for all of us. Again, not saying anybody should act on it, but there's stuff that can come out, and providing yourself the space and the environment, the support, the self-nourishing self-care to put yourself in this reflective space where you can allow to be able to listen, right? Individual circuitry is very acoustic, right? Sound is very important to individual circuitry. So whatever you can do to build this sort of cocoon for yourself and kind of reflect on this stuff, there really could be something that pops out. And if it does, I hope you'll come back next week and share it, because that'd be really fun to hear about. But here we have it. Channel of structuring, as this pressure from the head center comes down, it finally may get the opportunity to reach the throat in gate 23, which is called the gate of assimilation. It's also called splitting apart. And so this gate 23 is the unique voice of expression possible. There's 2 unique individual gates in the throat, gate 23 and gate 8. Gate 8 is the gate of contribution. We'll get there in a moment. But this 23, again, the challenge of the 23 is it's trying to speak something that other people don't understand. I mean, sometimes gate 23 almost sounds like a foreign language because it's so innovative, or it's so forward thinking, or it's just so different, right? And so that's where that tribal collective resistance can come in. And it's so important to follow our strategy, right? If someone has channel of structuring, it's not about running around all the time telling everybody what you know. It's not going to land. It's a projector channel, right? It's got to be invited and all that kind of stuff. So So there's a lot of important information that's taking place in this archetypal channel, but it's all got to come back to the timing on how it most effectively gets expressed. Sirach, yes, please come back again.
Hey, no, I didn't have a question. Don't worry.
Okay. So the channel of structuring. So whatever emerges from every channel I'm going to talk about, we're going to have this potential mutative quality. When something really important may come out of this channel this week with all this vibrational influence, the timing of how it comes out can be extremely powerful if it's in the right timing, if it's with the right people in the right place, all the things that strategy has the opportunity to lead us to. It can really have a breakthrough, a Uranian, sudden, ground shaking, bone chilling reverberation of some unique insight that we all need to hear. So I think this week, soundboarding with your friends and family can be really helpful because we've all got this channel activated. So it's like, let's listen to each other. Not some of it's going to get thrown away. That makes me think of another thing of individual circuitry itself. Not all mutations are viable. They're just not. That's why there's so many of them, right? It's why we throw seeds in the ground. Only some of them take. That's how individual circuitry works. Like it's always working on this mutative quality, but it doesn't mean they're all going to take root and actually grow. So it just takes this idea of surrender and patience to the process. Not every great insight is going to do anything, but it might. When it does, it can be really powerful. So that's everything that's going on up there coming down to the throat. So from all of this right here, let's go back down here and come up from the bottom again. So we already talked about the channel of mutation. So we get into the life force energy, right? And when we go up from here, we're going up to the channel of the beat, a design of the keeper of the keys. And I always thought that was a weird one when I first read it. I'm like, keeper of the keys. What the heck is that all about? But it is pretty simple. I mean, it is the keys to the car, like the direction. I mean, the magnetic monopole for all of us actually resides in gate 2, right? This is not only where the Earth is right this moment in line 5. This is the most receptive gate of the 64 gates, right? It's all 6 broken lines, right? It's the most yin of all yin, the most receptive. So this is where the magnetic monopole sits, and that one-sided magnet is drawing life to each of us into this receptivity. And that's how we meet that with our strategy, and life evolves. But this channel of the beat is this gate 14, which is called power skills. This is the life force energy, ability to respond with power into a unique direction. So this is all about the individual that carries this, taking their self into a new direction, hopefully out of response, because that's the only way it's going to know if it's on the right road. But out of response, it can go in a very unique direction. And everybody else looking at it goes, why did they go that way? Like, I totally wouldn't have gone that way. Why are they going that way? Well, if they're a generator and they're following their response, they're going to take us into they're going to take themselves. And hopefully the idea is by moving in that new direction, they feel empowered and inspired by that expression of their life force energy. And by them doing that, those of us that may be in their fractal or their unit, we may be inspired too. We'll be like, wow, look how they did that. Like, I am inspired by their life direction that they just took. And so that has this opportunity to empower others. And as I mentioned, so the sun currently today is still in gate 1, which puts the Earth in gate 2. So again, we have this very strong emphasis on this polarity between gate 1 and gate 2, and then here gate 1. So once we get to gate 1, still working our way to the throat, because again, all energy in the body graph always moves up towards the throat, right? It's always moving up to the throat or down from the head center. Everything's always moving through pressure to the center of expression, the throat center. So when we get to gate 1, we are now in the channel of inspiration, the design of a creative role model, all right? Channel of inspiration, and it can be expressed through the second individual gate of expression. We talked about gate 23. Now we're on gate 8. It's called the gate of contribution. This is the individual voice of the creative expression. So gate 1 being the most yang gate. So this polarity, if you look at gate 2 and you look at the hexagram itself, it has 6 broken lines. If you look at its polarity on the other side of the wheel, it's gate 1, which has 6 solid lines, which are all what we call yang. So this is the most powerful, potent, creative potential in a body graph. Gate 1, the gate of creative self-expression. And that's why it's called inspiration, because it is a true inspiration to carry this channel and to express it. But again, all of that comes back to the fact that it's on a pulse, that creative expression may not always be there, that it takes the relaxing, surrendering to the promise or the process and the chemistry that this channel brings, which means it's not always there, which is not a problem. And again, that's what I always want to encourage, is that with all of our individual gates and circuitry, to really appreciate the melancholic phase. There was a beautiful talk, if you guys got to hear it, between Teresa Brenneman and Mike the other day. And it was a couple of weeks ago. We've got the recording. If you didn't get to hear it and you're interested in individual circuitry, I highly recommend it. They did a phenomenal job of describing the sensations that they've experienced through their life, because they carry a lot of individual circuitry. And it was very supportive. So again, what I'm highlighting there is just how important it is to surrender to the process of this powerful mutative gift of whatever individual gates you have, because it is a process. You can't just hit the button. What we can do, though, is recognize that energy. We can nurture it. We can work on our creative activities, which again is increasing our endomorphins. It's dissipating and releasing any fear. So creativity right now, with all these individual gates going on, is really the name of the game. It's also important, because I didn't mention this, but in Scorpio, of the 5 gates that are in the sign of Scorpio, 4 of them are individual gates, including what we're in today, which is gate 1. Well, gate 1 is also the first gate of the last quarter in the Rave Mandala. So this week we entered the quarter of mutation. Well, the quarter of mutation has 16 gates, and out of those 16 gates, 8 of those gates are individual. So the sun is going to be giving us a lot of time with individual gates. So in the program, in the coming weeks and months here, we're going to be getting a lot of this individual circuitry. So again, that's why I was hoping this might be helpful. Back to the channel of inspiration. It's got to happen when it happens. Now, of course, it is a projected channel. So we're looking for invitation here for this person that carries that channel to be invited to share their creative self-expression. But even when it's not invited, or it's in the melancholic phase, it can be nurtured and supported and recognized, even though it's not actually manifesting itself, either verbally or physically or whatever. If it's still there, this idea of giving it that attention can be really, really supportive. Okay, so let's, I was going to keep this to an hour, which I'm already at an hour, but I'm just going to speed up just a little bit. If we go a little bit over, that's fine. And then hopefully there'll be some questions at the end. I was kind of feeling like today would be about an hour and a half. If you can stay, great. If you got to go, I understand. It's all going to be recorded. But let's go back down here and finish out these channels. So we've now covered the entire central column, which again, most of it is activated right now. Of the 10 gates in the center column that I've just gone through, 7 of those are currently activated by the transit field. The only one that I haven't covered yet is going to be gate 55 over here. That is where Saturn is right now. So why don't I go ahead and cover that channel? So we'll go back down here from the root pressure center, this adrenal drive to go out into life. We have gate 39 called the provocateur. This is the adrenal pressure to provoke the spirit. All right, this is a very interesting channel called the channel of emoting, a design of moodiness. This provocation is provoking our emotional spirit. That's where gate 55 is. Gate 55 is the gate of spirit. This is, again, the idea of that abundance, that in the knowing, when the pulse is on, I feel emotionally full. Life feels so good. Like, yes, those are fun days, but they don't last. You know, there's going to be the other day where it's like, oh my gosh, nothing's there. So it is a very moody channel, right? But it has such an important, vital archetype, because we're below the solar plexus, right? So this channel here, the archetype of this channel is this is going through the wave, right? It's very connected to the cyclical nature of life, that we have to go through the highs of the highs and the lows of the lows and up and down again, like a ship at sea on a journey that over time hopefully reaches its destination. So this channel brings all of this energy. And so anyone that carries this channel, it's obviously very important to really learn to appreciate those moods. They are speaking to you through your nervous system. They're not a problem. They're actually very important to your process. And it's all about that feeling. How do I feel? Am I elevated or low? And it's not about making any judgment about that. It's about waiting through patience to understand what is it acoustically telling you with whatever you're going through. And so having Saturn in gate 55 right now, here we have the planet of limitations, the taskmaster sitting on our gate of spirit, really kind of putting the pressure on. Oh yeah, what is your spirit about, Mr. Gate 55? What does make you feel emotionally abundant? Well, that's a great contemplation right now. Even if we don't carry that gate, again, we are experiencing this archetype. Doesn't mean we're supposed to do anything about it unless your authority says to, but we get to experience it. And that's why I love transits. I always say every week in my report, if you follow your strategy and authority, you are dressed for the weather. It doesn't matter what the transits are. You're going to be fine. But if you have the time, like we do today, right now, or when I do the reports, to contemplate these things, just having a little bit of awareness of what the weather is certainly nice, right? It's great to be dressed for it. You're going to weather it. That's fine. But having the awareness, what it can do is it helps us embody the program in a way that we can help become more aware, right? It can go into our channel of awareness and our own process of being like, okay, yeah, this is what I'm understanding through the patience of this process and this transit. Here's what's coming out. Here's what I'm feeling. So what's happening, all of this is percolating down here in this channel of emoting, and it's the gate 55. Oops, I'm on the wrong side. What am I doing here? The gate 55 over here is what we call a probable. It's like a potential awareness. It's working on, it's getting the pressure from the provocation, and it's trying to understand through its moodiness what that awareness may be, but it's not exactly sure yet. It cannot be sure until it's fully inside the solar plexus, so to speak. I'm speaking of this metaphorically. As it moves into the nervous system and starts getting processed through the wave over time, that's where the awareness can emerge over time. And once that emerges, it now has the possibility to be expressed out through the channel of openness, the design of a social being. This is one of the three primary manifestation channels possible in a body graph. There's only three. This is one of them, so that gives it some importance there, of course. And this is the emotional manifester. This channel is. This is the ability to express out of gate 22, which is called the gate of grace, right? The grace is having, in my opinion, the way I describe this gate, it's just when you go through these waves and the ups and downs of life, right? And we go through these challenges and tribulations and these slams that life presents all of us in one form or another, the cathartic experience of going through that can be so earth-shattering that we actually have the potential to develop grace. The grace that we're still alive itself. Being alive is an amazing thing. Being able to breathe every moment. We don't think about it much, but it's a lot just to stay alive on this planet. So surviving these emotional crises that we can go through, there can be grace in that. We have so much maturity now because we're now coming out of the solar plexus motor. Now we've got some awareness that's ready on its own timing, and again, based on the type and strategy and authority of the person that carries that, but on its own timing, it has the ability to manifest this emotional grace of openness. People that have this channel, that have really worked with their chemistry and are clear on their wave and all that, man, you can feel them. An emotional channel of openness comes into a room and they just carry like this, it's like that charisma almost. It's like, oh, who are they? Like you just want to like talk to them. You're like, it like moves the energy in the room, right? Of course it does. It's a manifesting energy parting the sea of other emotional chemistry. And everybody just kind of goes, wow. Well, that's the primary emotional manifesting channel of the channel of openness. But if that energy is not correct, if it's not honoring its authority, its spark of creativity. If it's a manifester on informing and initiating, well, it can wreck a room. I mean, this channel at the low end, and it's incorrect and it's all out of alignment, it can wreck the whole party, right? This is the energy that comes in, and like, it's like, okay, party's over, everybody go home, right? So it's incredibly powerful. But this is the idea of what's going behind there. A person that carries this channel is going through that pulse timing and waiting for that spark of creativity to bring that emotional grace and manifestation to bear on gate 12. So it's very, again, interesting that gate 12 is called the gate of caution, right? Be careful, Mr. Primary Emotional Manifesting Channel. Watch out, because if you bring that energy into the wrong place with the wrong people at the wrong time, it is not going to be pretty for anybody, not the person doing it, not for the people watching it. So the caution is to be cautious about the timing for this expression. When it's correct, man, it is going to change the world potentially. But when it's incorrect, it's going to wreck the party. So together, the 12 and the 22, they bring dynamic manifestation onto the physical plane. And all of that energy that I just talked about, because these two channels make up what we call the stream of emoting. This is getting all of that solar plexus territory, all of the emotional feelings and process and relationships, the interrelationship dynamics, all of that goes into all these life experiences. This is the channel that says, I am the person that is going to share that and deliver and manifest that for everyone to be empowered by. So it just is really beautiful when the story's really good, but it can be kind of scary when it's not. But that's all part of the channel emoting, and all of that is, again, governed, if you will, or overseen by the authority of the solar plexus. Now, when we go to the left side of the chart, coming out of the root center again, we're going to go to the mirror image again. So the symmetry. So if we know a lot about those channels, if you carry those, you've already studied them. And now let's say, for example, you were trying to learn the stream of intuition that I'm going to go to next. There's a lot of similarities. Now they're very different because they're governed by different awareness centers. Again, the solar plexus on the right with its time and patience and emotional waves. Now we're going over to the spleen, which is immediate. It's ancient instinctual awareness in the moment. It has to do with health and sustainability, survivability. It's the immune system. It's always going to be related to the health and sustainability of whatever it's working with. And it's always going to be happening right now. So with this gate, we're talking about gate 38, the gate of the fighter, the adrenalized pressure to fight. And it's meeting up on the other end of the channel with gate 28, called the gate of the game player. So the fight from gate 38 is to fight for meaning in life. This is called the channel of struggle, a design of stubbornness. This channel is incredibly tenacious. Someone that carries this channel, they've got a particular struggle that they came here to work with, and they are like a dog with a bone. All right. It is intense. The other thing I love about this that just came to my mind is we're going through these channels. It always makes me remember how powerful projector channels are. They are unbelievable. There are 22 projector channels in a body graph, and they are some of the most powerful, incredible channels there are. So I just want to give a little nod to our projectors out there that we love you, we appreciate you, and we want to recognize you, because projectors, man, they are the agents of change, right? We need their unique observation so badly. And so these two channels that I'm on right now, the channel of emoting and the channel of struggle, it just speaks to how powerful these channels are. They are the beginning of this process down here at the root. And in the channel of struggle, there is a struggle with what has meaning in life. It's being met by the game player over here. This is the gate of risk-taking. This is the ancient instinctual knowledge to know what risk is going to help lead me to the meaning of life, right? Because all these channels are connected. So it's connected to the channel of awareness and inner truth. By chemistry, it is connected. So this channel is part of this percolating down here at the lower part of the body graph. What am I going to pick to take a bit of a risk on and really sink my teeth into and struggle? And through that struggle and sticking with it and being really stubborn, it may lead to some incredible mutation that is going to empower my life and probably empower others that were involved as well. So the channel of struggle. So gate 28, again, is one of those potential awareness gates. We don't know yet. Like, it's going to take the risk. It's got the instinctual awareness to pick the risk, but we don't know the story yet, right? We've got to go through and get deep into that struggle and process that. That'll get processed, and then that immediacy of the spleen. The spleen is like, yes, this risk is good for me. It's healthy. May look dangerous to everyone else on the planet, but for me, this is the jam, right? This is like the guy who jumps off the cliff and they do the flying thing with the parachute, whatever that thing is called. It's the craziest. It looks so fun. It's not for everybody, but like, got to be a unique person to be willing to take a risk like that. But they take that risk, and when they live through it, man, that's pretty cool. So just to really sharing how, it does take that. This is like the whole break on through to the other side. This is what this channel is looking for. It's like, what is going to take me there? And when I find what it is, my spleen's going to say yes to it. And I'm going to engage in that struggle and be stubborn to stick with it. So then it goes to the spleen, it gets processed here through the instinctual awareness, and it comes out a probable awareness. This is what coming out of the upper side of the spleen is about. Now we've gotten processed through the lymphatic system, and there's a probable awareness of gate 57, that intuition, like, bam, got it. Here it is. This is that in the moment, penetrating awareness, which is the name of the channel that it's in. It's called the channel of the brainwave, which goes to gate 20, which is the penetrating awareness in the now, right? This brainwave. It's this chemistry line that's like, bam, it's so powerful. Like, it's, this channel, it has so much to tell us. For them, whoever carries it, I don't have this channel, but whoever has this channel, this is about having that instinctual lymphatic health and sustainability awareness in the moment to share this intuition in the now. So gate 20 is the gate of the now, the expression gate, expressing in the moment. So this struggle has the potential in this channel to get out, to be expressed through the throat center of, here is the penetrating awareness of what that intuition brought, right? This is the empowering knowing. I know I have that awareness, back to the circuitry, bringing back that gate 61, it could be, it's like they're speaking to each other, and here that voice is saying, I have the intuition of, this is what I need to say right now. And that whatever I'm sharing is empowering, and you may feel it, and you may be empowered as well. The channel of the brainwave. All right, I think that actually did it there. The quick storyboard of all of these channels, and they're all working together, and they're all leading us into something new, something that feels incredibly inspiring, something that when we first taste it, we can't let go, that we're going to struggle with it, and we're going to be emotional about it. And at some point, that pulse is going to turn on, and we're going to feel true inspiration about it. And that inspiration is going to work with the awareness. And at some moment, I'm going to have something really individual, and I'm going to structure it in my own mutative voice and express it. And that's basically what I want to share about the knowing circuitry that we are all experiencing a strong dose of this week. Wow, there was a lot of comments. I'm so sorry I wasn't able to read all those while I was talking. Does anybody want to come forward and chat with me and talk about any of this stuff? I'm going to read through this. I'm going to take a breath and just read through the chat here. But if anybody's got anything, let me know.
I've got a 4-1 daughter who's a generator who has unconscious, and she's a generator. She's 3.5 years old, and she is ferocious. When you were telling about the 2838, and then she's a 4-1 on top of that.
Wow.
Yeah, her name is Mercy, by the way.
What a cool name. What a cool name.
But I always look at her. So she's got all 3 channels going from the spleen to the root.
All 3 of them.
She does. And then the only other thing she has is the first root to sacral channel. I don't know the actual, it's not the 360 or the 952, but the other one, the cycles, beginnings and ends.
Yep, channel of maturation. She has that one as well.
she's all right there, and everything else is like pretty much wide open. Her completely wide open throat. I mean, she's wide open.
And open solar plexus?
Yes. Open
And the
solar
type
plexus.
again, you broke up at first. What type is she?
A generator.
Okay, yeah. So a generator, undefined solar plexus with the channel of maturation and all 3 channels going to the spleen. That is an incredibly interesting chart, James.
I know. I look at it and I'm like, she needs to use her body for sure. I need to keep her in some exercise, and you know, I want to get her on a drum set and let her just use all that energy. And yeah,
absolutely. So fun that you've got human design to enjoy this journey with her.
That's really why I did it in the long run. I mean, not that I wouldn't want to know about myself, but I thought I have 2 children, and if this is the real deal here, I kind of would love to help my children a little more understanding of themselves. And they'll run up to me when I'm on the computer and go, let me see me, and they want to see their body graphs. And I have a 7.5-year-old daughter too, so she's really interested in it.
Yeah, that is awesome. That is awesome. Well, I look forward to talking more about this in the future too. Her chart and her life. I mean, that's an incredibly interesting configuration, because from those 3 channels to the spleen, there's so much emphasis there. But because she carries the format channel for the solar plexus, which is undefined, we have a real juxtaposition going on. So there's such an immediate knowing she's going to always have that's going to support her sacral response. I mean, so in her chart, her authority is the sacral center.
Yep.
That's the number 1 priority, is that following that response, which you'll be teaching her. Do you like this? Do you like that? Right. She's always going to have that immediate knowing of the splenic awareness center, which will always be supporting her sacral. So because the sacral operates out of response in the moment. And so does the spleen. So whenever we have an undefined solar plexus and we have a defined sacral and a defined spleen, we've got 2 centers based in the moment. But with having the channel of maturation, and it's a format channel, that's a very high energetic priority. So much of life is going to be about the process. So even though there's always going to be this immediate trust your intuition that ties in with your sacral response, life is a process. And so through the undefined solar plexus and always taking in the energy of others that are defined, there's so much life story that's going to take place in that solar plexus. So it's a real juxtaposition in the fact that that format channel is saying, take your time, go through the process. But what's helpful is that very energized spleen is there to protect. And so she can be really healthy, even though there's going to be the beginnings, middles, and ends, the ups and downs, part 1, part 2, part 3. Life is a cycle for all of us. There's going to be that immediacy of her health system always saying yes or no with that sacral center.
My 7-year-old has undefined emotional solar plexus as well, and she has every single gate coming out of it as a hanging gate.
Wow.
So she connect to everyone. Anyone could walk into her aura and connect with her.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, it's wild.
Fun to look at all these different charts for sure.
Yeah. Thank you, Richard.
Yeah. Thank you for being here, James. I can't wait to see your program. Thanks for coming on and doing some programs. Really appreciate it.
Oh, love it, man. Love that I was invited, and it's something I've always wanted to do. So I'm so excited to be a part of it.
Outstanding. We are too.
Cool.
Very cool. And thanks for sharing too. Did anyone else have anything they'd like to share before we go?
I have a question.
Yes. Hey, Janica.
Hi, I would love your perspective on this. It's something I've been contemplating for a while. So my Saturn design side is in gate 12, line 3.
Okay.
And my Saturn personality is gate 52, line 1.
Okay.
So when you were talking about the challenges of Saturn, and the way I took it is like, these are the things that we're to learn. These are things to embrace. And yet when we what's the word, when we go against them, I'm not sure if that's really it, then, you know, there's consequences to that. So when you look at that, gate 12 and gate 52, those are both like slow down, caution.
Okay. Yeah, they really are. Yeah.
Yeah, which 90% of my life is that way. And what I'm wondering though, is that what I've noticed over the last maybe year, 6 months is that when, I have the channel of judgment too, right? And I have an undefined throat, pure generator. When I share the insights I see from, or the improvement I see, even when it's asked, I end up getting a sore throat or getting sick. And I keep wondering, is it this 12 and this 52 telling me to slow down and be cautious and sit still and not to speak? But then what is the point?
Well, I'm pondering your comment. Now, when you get that invitation, though, does your sacral move you to want to like express?
Sometimes I don't, and I'll even say, no, I can't say that right now. Like, I'll get this, like, no, like my mouth will even shut because I'm not sharing this.
So even when it's not like that, you get the sacral response out of invitation for your advice. Even then, you always get a sore throat.
Not always. Definitely when I ignore my sacral, I do, definitely. And so I've gotten very selfish about that.
Good.
But yeah, sometimes it still happens. And so then I start questioning what else is going on, what else is playing out to create this.
Yeah. Well, again, it is interesting. I'm just trying to think of anything I could offer of support, because I don't know why that would happen. Of course, we would think that wouldn't happen if you have an energetic, positive response. You've been invited. It's in your wheelhouse and you're sharing. I'm not sure what the sore throat, other than maybe after you expressed it, you didn't like what you said, and that can happen. Right?
Oh,
if
yeah, all
share
the time.
it and then you reflect on it, or afterwards you're kind of like, oh, I didn't say it the right way, or maybe it's saying, it's just another signpost or indicator. Well, I'm not gonna keep that conversation going, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. And as you said, that it is usually when I have to share something that's negative. And people tend to take that from me, even when they ask, as a wound.
There, I think, okay, now we're getting somewhere. Now that might help, because if you're sharing what you believe, you're feeling the truth, you're following your strategy, and you're sharing the knowledge and your channel of judgment, which you're talented at doing. That's, I think, sometimes you could try with this, and maybe you have, but that idea of, with communication is such a delicate process when we're sharing things people don't want to hear. So sometimes just those little things like, I've got something to share, I'm not sure you're going to like it. Do you want to hear it? It's kind of like putting it back in their court. And that, I think, that can help release whatever resistance or friction is in the air. If you're going to share something that they're going to have resistance to because you already know them, or something about what's, there's something there that makes you feel like this is not what they want to hear, but it's what I need to share. I think sometimes getting their buy-in before you share it.
Yeah.
It's almost that kind of thing where, like anything, if someone dies in the family and you call someone and you're like, are you sitting down? I've got some bad news. Are you ready?
Yeah.
It's like even those little comments are really powerful, because they're sort of changing the vibrational energy between two people to open space for something challenging to come out verbally.
Yeah.
It's like when we're talking with our loved ones, it's very helpful to say, I really want to have this serious conversation with you. And are you in a good space? Check in with their wave, like, is this okay to talk about this now? Sometimes those little extra phrases may give some of these answers to why that experience is happening to you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I will. I usually say something to preface it, but I think what I felt in response to what you were saying was to be more direct in that to be more direct about it, to that maybe even reiterate it a couple of times before saying anything. Because the other thing is, my voice and my communication are 62 and 48. So I go very detailed and very deep. Right. And it really nails things, and that's not easy for most people. So I think you're right. I think I need to really slow the conversation down and repeat it.
And interestingly, you said the word direct. That's actually line 5 of gate 22 on the other side of gate 12. You
Yeah,
don't have gate 22, but it's interesting you would pick that word because that is part of that channel. It's the line
Yeah.
5. It's the practical voice of emotional directness. I'm going to tell you something. You may not like it, but I'm going to be direct with you. And it's going to be practical and it may hold some truth for you.
yeah, I think yeah. Well, I think so much of our body graphs, we live out in those open centers and open gates. So
Yeah.
playing that out for sure, that makes, that makes it, okay, I will play with that. Thank you.
Cool. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Is that another? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, real quick, I just wanted to say thank you for this talk. It was amazing. I've been cooking and just listening to everything. I've learned so much about like the individual I was gonna say wave, but pulse. Yeah, I love the way that you speak about everything. It's really clear and it's sort of just gonna mull. So thank you. I just want to say thank you.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate the feedback, and I want to thank everybody for being here. I'm really having fun myself. So yeah, thank you for your time, and I love the feedback. So message me any way you want. If you got my phone number, the Discord, give me some more ideas for topics. I'll keep doing circuitry as we move along. And like I said, I do want to do some chart analysis, but very open and receptive to have something to respond to. So. All right. Well, I'm going to wrap it up. And thank you guys so much. It's been great being here with you. Take care. I'll see you guys on Discord.